All right, we're live.
Cool.
We're off. So our guest today, Miss Betty Weyek, and I don't want to mess up your title. So what is your current title?
Music program specialist, I guess. I don't even remember. Program coordinator, music program coordinator.
What is entailed in that job?
It's everything but teaching the kids. So planning the concerts, setting up all the dates, planning all, the festivals, do everything so that the band directors can teach.
That's critical. So in a lot of places that would be called like a VAPA, right? Or you're in some VAPA coordinator, visual performing arts coordinator. In some places they have maybe a secretary that's specific to the instrumental music program, or it gets shared between dance and sometimes it's performing arts center. But it's largely the logistical coordinator for these things.
Absolutely.
Because it's ACHS Music History Night, more or less. You were involved at ACHS in a variety of different ways. So can you give us the beginning?
Beginning freshman year, way back in 1969, playing clarinet, marched in the band, did football games. You mentioned in our talk before Arcadia. We went to the parades in Arcadia, Riverside 500. We marched in their parade. I don't know, just general band stuff, band geek. Proud of it.
And then, so what years were you there? Because you did have you moved around.
Right. I was there 69 through 71. Then I went to Lake Havasu, Arizona, and was in their band through my junior year of high school, and unfortunately moved my senior year to Wisconsin, little rinky-dink town in Wisconsin, but they actually had an 80-piece band. Every instrument you could think of was in that band in this town of 500.
As we discussed with Pat Seidling in a conversation that we had with him, the Midwest really had some programs.
Yes, yeah. They appreciated music.
Yeah, it's everywhere handles it differently. I did want to share quickly my screen here. So it's a little easier to scroll through this, even though it's kind of this, attachment version. So this is your freshman year at Camarillo High School, where you had the big cotton fuzzies over your head.
Yep. That's where you kept your lunch.
Old school.
Yeah.
Now kids just do that in their locker and then they leave it there when we go on quarantine.
Forever. It's to feed the rats. So this is a traditional uniform. This is traditional parade uniform. You got the white stripe on the side because you want to see leg shape from the visual judge. And the big C, it's always really important. And even in our uniform, up until our recent uniform, our current uniform has a very, very subdued C on the chest that you'd have to actually almost look for, but it's very common to have the ID unit on the side. So in a parade, you can, the judge knows who you are, and then a big letter that represents this is a very traditional parade uniform. So you guys did parade, obviously. That was
right. The breastplate was a silver.
Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't white, it was silver.
Oh wow. So that was silver?
That was silver.
So it didn't breathe well, is what you're telling me.
Absolutely.
And then what did you guys do for football games, since it wasn't a field band and field bands didn't really exist like they do now? So how did you guys approach that?
Well, when we started for the pre-show, we would march down the road down the backside of the school and come into the field down, behind the whatever that is down there now, out on the field. And you're not going to believe this. We faced the visitors and made an H, and we played high neighbor and welcomed the visiting team. Then we turned around and we played the Star Spangled Banner, and off we were gone. But yeah, we played high neighbor and always welcomed the visiting team.
That is super. I mean, because no football fans were going to be that kind to the neighbor. So I think that's really interesting. And for people who don't realize, this is very traditional, and this is still done all over the place including LAUSD, bands travel typically, and there's typically some sort of interaction with the audience of the visitor side, and the two bands interact. This is common all over the place.
Then we sat for the whole football game. We stayed in uniform and sat through the whole football game. But what we did is after the game, we came back down on the track and we marched back up the road up to the top, but we played Mickey Mouse marching up the hill.
That hill's not kind.
No.
Yep. And we played Mickey Mouse marching up that hill.
That's incredible.
That was the tradition.
So tell us a little bit about what this is right here.
That's the album cover from our spring concert in what was May 22nd, 1970. And I don't know if you can zoom in, but one of our band members drew on that. And if you look on that left, well, a little too far, the left window, that's Gary Gertis looking out the window, the artist. He drew himself in the window.
Oh,
how cool is that?
See the two eyes?
Yeah.
That's him looking
right
out
there.
The window. Yeah. So that was designed by a senior. He was a senior that year.
Did you guys record and turn all concerts, or was it end of the year concert only? How did that work?
Just the spring concert.
Spring concert.
Yeah.
So and you've actually offered and you'll be helping me catalog some of this so we could share this with students and have a kind of a historical archive, if you will, of this stuff. And so under the direction of Lee Davis, can you tell us a little bit about Lee Davis?
I was a kid, so I don't remember that much about him other than being the band director. But I can tell you he was pretty strict. And I remember we were prepping for a parade one time, and I guess we were goofing off and just not doing what we were supposed to do. And he got really angry at us, and he went in his office and said, "That's it, I've had it, never again, we're not going to do anything," and left us all kind of standing out there looking at each other. And we talked the bus driver into driving us across to Woodside Greens. And at the time it was just streets, there were no houses. And we took our drum major and the whole band we had to take a bus to get across there. And we started marching and practicing ourselves to prove to our band director that we really did care about band and wanted to go to the parade. So.
We would be in trouble for doing something like this now.
But he had said he quit. We didn't care. He wasn't going to do it anymore. He quit. So that was our way of trying to prove to him that we did care and we wanted to.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
Mr. G, have you ever done anything remotely like that or similar to that or with the same goal in mind to students?
As a director, like storm out and say, a little. I've ended like a classroom rehearsal a few minutes early by just like I don't throw my hands up in the air. I very carefully put my baton in its place and just kind of like walked off.
Okay.
I don't remember what band it was with.
I've made kids leave and come back more ready than they were before.
Yeah.
I've done that.
That's a little more that's a little more proactive. That's probably better. That's impressive.
My old boss definitely did what Mr. Lee Davis did, but my old boss was a Camarillo alum as well. So maybe that was part of it. Oxnard Civic Auditorium. This is the OPAC, right?
Correct. Yeah. Correct.
So long history of sharing facilities.
Right. And I keep forgetting to ask, but I am almost sure that Reese Copsey recorded this.
Oh, because he was a sound engineer, right? I mean, that was
Correct.
Before he was a music teacher. This was his gig.
Yep. And it doesn't say, I was looking all over on my album cover. It doesn't say who recorded it, but I'm pretty sure it was Reese Copsey.
That is pretty fascinating, actually. And so this is you with your clarinet?
See, you can see it closer. See the silver?
Yeah, no, I do see it now.
Yep. I was a clarinet player.
Uniforms back in the day had a lot of wool too, so they had to be dry cleaned and cared for in a very different way. I really would love to know what this is. This says banquet up top.
That was our band banquet. And what I want, did you see the price? Look at the price to attend the band banquet. That's why I sent it to you.
But in those days, that's not a little bit of money.
Yeah, but still $4.25. But that was a rose that I was given at the banquet. But I danced too much, so I actually lost the bud.
You guys had a dance at your banquet?
Yes.
Where did you guys have your banquet?
In the gym.
Okay.
We ate in the cafeteria. We ate someplace. I don't remember where it was we ate, and then we went to the gym.
All right. I did not prepare you for this at all, and I apologize. What was gas in 1970 if a banquet ticket was $4.25?
Oh, that I don't remember.
Under $1.
Yeah, it was under $1. I remember my husband talks about it. He worked in a gas station and he was getting paid $1.25 an hour. So I don't remember what gas was.
In 1970, the retail gasoline price
45
was 36 cents.
I said 45, yeah.
And the median home price was $24,000. So a Honda Civic.
Yes, absolutely.
a base Honda Civic, not even a base
Honda, no cameras, no side cameras. I do think that it's tricky to always put it into perspective. All of those things. I'm more fascinated less by the price, which is amazing. But then you guys had a full-on dance at your banquet.
Yeah, yeah. We were a family, just like you are now. We were just one big family.
So what about this one right here? We've got two pictures of Camarillo, or three pictures. Sorry, there's the drill team,
right?
The drummers, the percussion here with like old school field drums, and then you've got the Camarillo band, and then in the middle is actually the Simi Valley band.
Right. That was a closer picture of what the banners looked like back then.
Yeah.
I didn't have a good picture, but they were individual letters that they carried, and they were heavy. Camarillo's was actually connected to each other, where theirs was separate.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and anyone who's taught parade band, that's the banners are a very expensive investment and take a lot of upkeep, and heavy. They started getting to the point where they rotate, so they were on bearings, and it was really complicated. And then you have drill team. So can you drill team's very different than current color guard.
Right, drill team. There were like 30 of them, and you see those uniforms, very much the Spanish style. And they won first place everywhere they went. They took the awards, sweepstakes every time they performed. And they just marched behind us and did a full routine to our competition march.
And currently, there is only one drill team left in our district, and that's Channel Islands. And they compete nationally and still do very, very, very well. But it's very much its own thing. It's a separate entity. It's almost like I guess the equivalent would be like if you ask the dance team, would you like to come compete with us? You're going to do your own thing. You are part of our unit, but separate.
Right. Yeah. Every band had a drill team back then.
And then for a while, you had both color guard and drill team.
Yeah. And the parade competition, you got judged by what was in front of you and what was behind you.
Correct.
And if somebody stepped on the line too soon or too late, you got penalties.
I'm aware of penalties. I've gotten my fair share at the Camarillo Christmas parade.
Right.
Because I failed to read the parade Bible, which is like really quite long.
Right. Well, we lost first place in the Camarillo Christmas parade because we did not play the stinger before we got out of competition.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You have to complete a certain amount of the parade march within the competition zone.
Right. And talking about parades, the difference back then to now is to get into the Rose Parade back then, you needed to attend X number of band reviews and take first place. And at the time, Camarillo Christmas Parade was one of them. You had to win if you wanted an invitation to the Rose Parade.
So it had probably quite a turnout and some really competitive bands.
Absolutely. All the top-notch bands used to come to the parade.
And part of that is because, the Antelope Valley Christmas parade is not quite as friendly weather-wise. The year before I was in high school, my school went and it snowed, I think. So like, you know, I mean, there's not very, weather is, while it's hard to brag about our weather now, it's friendlier in Camarillo, you know, year round. So people understand the Rose Parade being, you know, one of the top 3 most important parades for a parade band. Nowadays, it's handled a bit differently. They had a contract with LA County Fair, and the winner of the LA County Fair got an automatic invitation the following year to the Rose Parade. But they have a committee a pretty large committee that goes all over the place to help get bands. When I was in high school, Arcadia Band Review and the Mount Carmel Band Review in San Diego were the 2 places that you would get selected, but you didn't have to win. It was about more than winning in a tournament style. It was about, you know, was it a big band, showmanship? It had to have something about it because the Rose Parade is one of the most widely viewed events on TV.
Right.
It was interesting now too, is a lot of field bands that don't do parade get in. So you get like Broken Arrow and from Oklahoma, and you get a lot of different stuff. That's really amazing though, that, you know, what you said, that one of the band reviews was Camarillo. So Camarillo was a focal point of parade band for a long time and brought in a lot of schools. And whereas parades have kind of gone by the wayside for a variety of reasons. One of the big ones being we have cities are supposed to fund them and not, you know, and when they cut back, as we experienced with the Ventura County Fair Parade, when those cut back, there's nothing else to replace them. Camarians sweep top fair awards.
I do think the word of Camarians is for me the most important, interesting part of the article, just because now I know what you call somebody who's from Camarillo.
I was not ready for that either.
Yeah. So.
And this is right here. They are, he said, the best bunch of kids I've ever had. They are really a fine group of kids. That was the director, Lee Davis. Definitely not the same guy who'd said, I'm done with you.
Yeah.
Band directors tend to be like that.
Yeah. Psychotic.
Hard work, practicing nearly every night since 4 weeks before school started. 4 weeks before school started.
Yeah.
You kids are soft. That's incredible. That's really cool. And this is the Riverside show, it looks like.
Yeah, probably. I don't have it in front of me.
Oh, sorry. No, Ventura County Fair Parade. It mentioned over here the Hollywood Santa Claus Lane Parade in Hollywood and the Riverside Parade. So traveled a lot. How many parades would you guys do a year?
My memory is like 3 or 4.
Okay, so it's, you know, not too dissimilar than a traditional kind of season.
Right. They said we went to like the Riverside and we got to stay and see the race out on the track in the race. Arcadia, I remember going to. The Santa Claus parade was fun. So, but my mom wouldn't come and get me on Friday nights. So we had the football games Friday night. So school, I packed 2 lunches. I sat in the band room, ate my lunch. We did the football game, and she'd come back and get me at 11 o'clock and then drop me back off at 7 a.m. the next morning to take off for the parade. So I lived in that band room.
That's one thing that's different about parades. If you're a bigger band, regardless, it's an early morning. Yeah. Not like field shows where you get to sleep in a little bit, maybe get a little bit of a rehearsal in. No, it's an early morning. Yeah. So went through a little bit of the history there. What do you feel like was your most memorable parade that you were a part of?
It's actually not the Camarillo parade, the Camarillo band. It was Lake Havasu, and we marched across the London Bridge when they opened it. And
whoa!
Yeah, that was pretty spectacular to be the first band to march across the London Bridge in Lake Havasu.
That's incredible. Yeah, and traveling costs maybe changed a bit, and so it was very common for bands to travel at least every year, every other year, give or take. I mean, in your high school time, you were going to get at least a couple big trips in.
Right. Well, actually, I was in the band in Havasu. Yeah. So we lived in Havasu when we did that.
When you did that, yeah. But that's incredible, and that's a major. The London New Year's parade is a major parade now.
Yeah. Yeah, and leaving Camarillo, but at Lake Havasu, it was a 4-hour drive to Phoenix. So everything we did with that band was a 4-hour bus ride. So
Yeah, while we're in the suburbs, we're not in a rural place. So I know going to parades, we would see like Barstow or like these places that are, I mean, they had to drive a few hours to get there, be there for a few hours, and then have to drive a few hours back. That always threw me off. Or when I was in high school, Bakersfield bands coming down here to do something. It's like, it's a long ways. And Mr. G, I mean, growing up in Clovis, you probably had a lot of long bus trips.
Right.
Yeah. So we actually, the only parade I ever did in high school was the Clovis Rodeo Parade. And we only did that, I think, twice. My band directors always hated parades, which is probably where I got it from. Other than the Camarillo Christmas Parade, obviously.
Of course.
Yeah, but I did do a lot of parades in middle school, and I know we did one in like Pismo, I think.
Which is not a close drive to Fresno.
No, that was always the long distance one. But yeah, we drove, I think, up to like an hour for like our local shows, and then we'd go out to that one in Pismo, I think it was. And then high school, we drove down fairly regularly to LA for the WBA shows, and
like 3 hours.
Right? Yeah, and then and there was always one in the Bay Area, like near it was in
the Gilroy show,
actually.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, the longest we ever did was we did that BOA regional in St. George, which is a solid, I don't know, 8 or 9 hours, I think, if I remember correctly.
It's a long.
Yeah, so we did that one two or three times, and the LA BOA regional once or twice. Yeah, so we did some long ones.
But buses are significantly probably more comfortable than Miss Weyek had going to
That's probably
going to Phoenix, and the weather probably wasn't nearly as kind.
No, it wasn't. Pretty hot. So.
Yeah. So, all right, like let's dial it back into what your involvement was. So we talked a little bit about the past and the history, and kind of that parade focus. When did you get back involved in music now in a different role as a parent and volunteer and then staff member and all that? How did that happen?
Okay. My son's 7th grade spring concert. Walked up to the concert, and the band director said, "This is our last concert. They've cut my job, and there will be no more band." And that's where I met Reese Copsey. He had a clipboard with a petition, "You can't cut, you can't cut." And he and I stood out there and collected signatures and went to the next school board and said, "You can't do it." And from there,
what year was that?
91.
So they wanted to cut. What was the cause for the cut? What was happening that led to this?
They blame Proposition 13, and there just wasn't enough money in the budget. And they just said, "That's it."
Was there anything else being considered to be cut?
Not my memory. I don't think so.
So typically in budget crises, there's a lot of different things in the behind the scenes. I remember in 2008, it was, PE budgets and art budgets and all stipends of any kind for added job duties. So it was a little bit more spread out, but the biggest impacts were to electives and band. And some of that stuff still hasn't come back. And what you guys had to do then never really stopped.
Right.
So where was Mr. Copsey teaching actually at that time?
I don't know that he was and I don't know what you call it, a parent at Camarillo Heights, and he did the computer lab. And I think that's what he was doing at the time.
So he was involved because his daughter was a part of this.
Correct. Yeah.
Which is Miss Copsey, Miss Patricia Copsey, who's now the band director at Monte Vista.
Right. Yeah. And it took us 3 years, basically 3 years to do it. Reese and I and quite a few other people worked for free for 3 years to provide the music instruction before the school district actually took it over and, said, "Okay, this is going to stick around. We'll help pay for it."
So how did it evolve? So the band director said it was all being canceled, and that was the band director at Los Altos?
He did a bunch of the schools. My kid was at by then, see, I had moved away and came back, so I don't know all the history, but the middle school bands had pretty much gotten cut. And it was Emily Vataman that was traveling from school to school teaching, and they were cutting her position. And so my kiddos were at Los Primeros, and Trish was over at Monte Vista, I believe.
Okay, so and is that the official origination of Sockham?
Yes, yeah. Reese and I, Dan Rhymes, his wife, and a lot of community members got together and said, we can't let this happen. How are we going to fix it? And we formed Sockham and convinced the school board to allow us to front the money to pay for the teachers and that we would pay them back. And so that's how we started. And they agreed to it, and we scrambled for money for the whole year to get enough money to pay for the teachers' salaries.
And so they were paid by the district, but it was refunded through booster efforts.
Correct. Yes. Sockham probably paid for the music program through parent donations for close to 10 years. And then the school district found some money and they kind of paid for it for about 4 or 5 years. Then money kind of disappeared again. And we started the YAW, and it became self-sustaining. And the Sockham asked for donations, and we were able to keep the after school going. But connected to that is Sockham had raised enough funds that they had put Reese and Trish back in the classroom as an elective, but they only had intermediate band. And we said, well, it can never grow. So Sockham agreed to pay for, I believe it was 2 years, beginning band, and pay for that section, and $10,000 a section. And they were able to start a beginning band because they kept saying, we don't have enough kids. We don't have enough kids. And so we said, okay, we will pay for that section and you let beginning band. And that's how it grew at the middle.
It's always a numbers game, and you can't have one without the other.
Right.
But it's a if you only ever have a beginning band, you have nothing to recruit for that beginning band that is a more polished product. And you can't have, if you have only intermediate band, you have nowhere to start kids. And so it's a struggle. How did Sockham get involved with ACHS?
That started in my living room. My daughter's senior year was Joe Herzog's first year, and there hadn't been a band booster for quite a few years. And a group of us parents said, hey, we're feeding the high school. Now we need to build up the parent club there at the high school and make sure that our efforts in the elementary continues. And we had the very first meeting in my living room and formed. Carrie McDade and Debbie Miller became the co-presidents, and we moved on from there. And it was actually a committee of Sockham for probably 4 or 5 years before they became their own nonprofit.
So Sockham supported staff and created essentially the bridging of the programs when they existed and then not existed and came back and forth, but then additionally facilitated a booster organization at ACHS.
Correct.
So what was supporting music in the 90s at ACHS if there was no boosters? Was it just limited funds through the district, or?
Yeah, limited funds through the school district. We paid for every trip. Our parents out of our own pockets. I remember the year that my daughter was a freshman and son was a senior. It cost me $4,000 to just let them go on the few trips that they did. But everything was out of pocket by parent. There was no fundraising.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that was just to pay for what, there were so many other incidentals you paid, but that was $4,000 went to the band to take care of whatever the band was doing. So.
And this became the norm for programs of all kinds, not just music, everywhere. So,
right.
So it used to be very normal to get things given to you and trips be covered. You just kind of do paperwork, and then it all kind of came to be. It was part of the curriculum. It was part of how it was structured. And then, we could point to a lot of things, but Prop 13 being one of them. It progressively became booster fundraised, booster funded, and it never really fully got away from that.
Right. Yeah.
I know in my experience, when it got bad in '08, when I was first teaching and looking back at what we did to supplement that, some of what happened, it was a very temporary budget crisis in some ways for schools, obviously not completely for the entire economy, but a lot of us looked at that time and have had conversations with the other colleagues and said, we messed up. I mean, our having the boosters fund everything showed the districts that they didn't have to, because the parents would step up, and it's a kind of a struggle, because it creates an element of well, it'll solve itself, and we're in a fortunate enough community of parents that are involved enough and care enough about their children that we have had people step up over time.
It's a real catch-22, and Sockham went through that too, saying, okay, if we pay for it, then why are they going to ever step in and take care of it? And it has been a battle back and forth.
Yeah, it's you train them the wrong way.
Yeah.
Well, so that's been made a little bit more difficult lately in like the last 5 years, because booster clubs can't ask for contributions anymore, or can't ask, much less require. Obviously donations are still accepted and appreciated, but that change in the interpretation of California State Ed Code, based on a lawsuit in the early Fresno. Yeah, it was like the mid to late aughts, I think.
Yeah, it was in Fresno. I think it was
Fresno. It was a cheer squad. I don't remember.
Cheer and guard. There was
a guard also.
Two similar cases.
But both in the same district, I think. Both were in my school district.
Yes, and ACLU got involved and helped create a domino effect.
Right. I can't remember which school, but anyways, now that's obviously influenced decision making of booster clubs all over the place.
Well, and it's a challenge, you were a parent and you're a staff member and you're involved with Sockham. It's a challenge because it turns music directors into CEOs, CFOs, and involved in things that we were never intended to be involved with, or really part of our training. It's part of what we do. It's part of what we agree to, just like any coach or any youth sport. But it does create a complexity that is a challenge, and not every community can do this. What we do for our kids is we're really fortunate, and some of the modernization and changes we've made is because of parents and because of donations, not because we're Camarillo.
Right.
Those parents do what they do because they're Camarillo parents, and there's other schools local that are very fortunate too, but not every school is fortunate. And we look at other schools and we look at what they have, and we don't realize how much is sacrificed behind the scenes to make that happen. And our students, they know so much about you because you've been at their concerts and they've been around you, but to see that you've been an instrumental part, for lack, pun intended, for PVSD, Sockham, ACHS, you're a big part of that growth and that continuity. And it's really it's hard to imagine what things would look like if that group, that nucleus of parents of Reese Copsey and Mr. Rhymes and these people didn't step up. What could have happened? What would this look like? Would it be a band class and a choir class, and or would it be anything like what it looks like now?
Right. Now, who knew way back then? I mean, I would have never dreamed that I would be doing what I'm doing now. Way back when I got married and had children, I had no knowledge of what I was doing back then.
Keep telling everyone, kids are the best and worst thing to ever happen to you.
Right.
So Sockham, it's evolved a lot, and then you started the Youth Arts Academy, right?
Yeah.
So how are those different? Can you explain the differences?
The Youth Arts Academy was actually Karen Gatchell's thing. She said she was walking behind a couple kids leaving a class one day, and they were talking about how special it was to be part of the music, and that it was kind of like their dance academy. They felt special. So that's where the Youth Arts Academy came from. And it was all because they were the elementary schools did not like the pullout program that we were doing for band. And they fought us, something awful. And teachers were always planning special parties so the band kids didn't want to leave. That, no, you have to do it during lunch. You got to give up your lunch 2 days a week if you want to be part of the band. No, you can't play on the softball team because band is at the same time. And so we created the Youth Arts Academy and offered band after school so that they could still have band. And then that grew with Renee and Mauricio joining us with the strings. And then when we got the comprehensive middle schools to take over the band, we lost the after school band, but then we added the guitars, the ukuleles, the chorus, and everything else, trying to fill that gap for all the kids.
So the Youth Arts Academy is exclusively the after school function.
Correct. Yeah.
And what is SOCM's function now that things have evolved?
Basically, we plan the Youth Arts Academy, and we collect the donations from the parents, and we pay for the teacher's salary. It's all donated to the school district to fund the salaries for the teachers so that the teachers are all available for the students. And what else do we do? We buy instruments, we buy music, we, support the parades, all the refreshments at your concerts, banners, whatever's needed by the teachers, SOCM goes for.
So, getting away from SOCM for a second, what was the offerings like at the middle schools when you were a student versus when you first got involved versus now? Because, it sounds like it's evolved quite a bit and it's more.
Right. Well, when I was in elementary school, we had band. I don't remember starting band, so I don't remember if it was a pullout or what it was. But when I went to middle school, it was actually junior high, 7th and 8th grade. We met 5 days a week. There was a strings program, and you saw the music that we played my freshman year. So, we were sending quality musicians through that 5 days a week. Summer school, I was a teacher's aide for the music in summer school, and they taught 4 classes of some music through the summer. And that was what middle school was. When we hit high school, there was orchestra, band, and a stage band, not a jazz band. We were a stage band.
Can you please explain the difference between a stage band and a jazz band?
I'd like that too. Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. My impression of the difference between what you guys do now in jazz band is my mom's term. You guys play more long hair jazz music versus the stage band was pop music. So does that make sense?
It captures it.
Yeah.
For the record, we play a very large variety. And because there's been a long tradition of going to Leisure Village, I even got the pops of the 60s and 70s as played by the Count Basie Orchestra to try to just appeal to both.
You do program a lot of Pat Metheny though, which I think qualifies as long-haired jazz music.
That was
pretentious jazz. I like it.
Yeah, that was my mom's term.
So actually, since you brought up the program, I'd like to share the program. So Purple Carnival.
Yeah.
Purple Carnival was the parade march when I was a sophomore in high school. It's one of the hardest parade marches you could play. Bum, 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 bum. All the melody in low brass that is not normal is super hard. And Largo, Sonata No. 1 by Bach, and then Steve Razzo. Can you tell me a little bit about Steve?
Steve was a band member, and I think he was 3 years ahead of me. And he was writing music while we were in high school. So that was his piece of music that he wrote. He later became the band director at Camarillo High. Mm-hmm. And a few issues happened under him, and he moved on. So he didn't do anything bad. He was doing what he thought was good for the band. But what happened is they were heading to Frisco, I think, for a festival. And for whatever reason, the school district said, no trips. they're cut out. You can't go anywhere. No buses, no money. You can't go anywhere. And so this trip was planned during spring break. So the parents and the band director got together and said, hey, we're going on spring break. It's not a field trip to the school. And they went ahead and went up to the festival.
Oh, no. We all know some people who have done that, both in and out of this district. And it is a no-no. But super talented. He has 2 pieces here, and he was a student director of one of them here.
Yeah, and he, like I said, he wrote the music. He was also, what I think I told you in one of my notes, he was selected to be one of the herald trumpets when they opened the London Bridge in Havasu. He was one of the ones that got selected to let the mayor of London march across the parade in his trumpet.
That's huge.
Very talented. Very, very talented.
Flying Dutchman Overture by Wagner, not easy literature at all. Clifton Williams, Henry Fillmore March, and then the Clifton Williams and Charles Carter. Those are 2 of the most important pieces of literature for wind band. Also not particularly easy. So yeah, like really heavy literature. And then stage band didn't get because they were doing pop stuff. So it's just kind of by request, like that didn't have to have a program.
I think we played the horse. I think that was the song we performed. Yeah.
So
if you go back to the program.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Two things about that program.
Yes. Well, typewriter 1.
Yeah. The Ben-Hur Overture. Our French horn player had the big solo. Forgot his music. And so he did that solo by memory. So when you listen to it, you'll know that he was doing it by memory.
That's incredible.
And then Sonata for Winds. You want to know our name for that song?
What?
Snots for Winds.
Snots for Winds.
We hated that song.
Charles Carter is not the most appealing, I think, as a performer. But the literature, it just has like a quintessential band sound, because early band was all, like Flying Dutchman Overture, which is just transcriptions of orchestral works and ballets and different things like that. Now, you have actual band literature written for band. Holst being, one of the first. Carter was a big influence, and Clifton Williams. Big influences versus Parade March, which is a military march. So like it had a very different, again, a quintessential, sound to it.
Yeah, Flying Dutchman was a challenge. We spent many, many, many hours on that.
Yeah, that's not easy.
I really love that Fanfare and Allegro from that Clifton Williams. I played that in high school too. Actually, I like that piece a lot.
I played it in college we played at a festival at Carnegie, and that was one of our pieces. We had to bring like a traditional piece.
Yeah, I think we used that as one of our auditions for the National Concert Band Festival.
There you go.
Was on the recording.
I pulled up the album. The horse was played by the stage band, and Everybody's Rocking. The other piece.
It ain't the same anymore.
Yeah.
Quite a bit different. So what were the offerings when you were in high school at Camarillo? What were the ensembles? So you talked about orchestra and all that in junior high. What was the high school program like under Lee Davis?
So like I said, as a kid, I only remember band, but there was chorus. You had mentioned Henderson. Yes,
Scott Henderson.
Yeah, that was really, really big. The drama department and the chorus there was really, really big. I keep forgetting to look, but you know where the chapel is on Ventura Boulevard?
Yeah.
You got the stores, and then there's a big wall there.
Mm-hmm.
There used to be another storefront that was a giant wall, and they painted West Side Story up on there. And they did that year, my freshman year. The chorus and the drama department did West Side Story.
Best musical to ever be made. And I will fight anyone who says Sound of Music or Les Mis, because West Side Story is so, Leonard Bernstein, like, it's just the best music, and it's such a wide range of music, and it's terribly hard. That's That's really good stuff. So Scott Henderson, fun little side story. I ran into, so Scott Henderson was at the choral department at Camarillo High School. Then he went to a community college. I want to say Cerritos College, not in the area. Passed away soon after. His widow I ran into at a winery a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And she saw, I think I was wearing I had a Camarillo lanyard in my keys. And she asked me about that. And then she started talking to me about him. And I was like, there's a frame outside of my office about him that I've read a couple times and I've never dug deeper. The choral department was definitely had been and long was after a big part of the music department.
Yeah, Dr. Cowell took over, I think, afterwards.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when Doc came to Camarillo High. He was there when my kids were there, but he had been around for all those years too. So I'm not sure when he actually joined Camarillo High.
What was the offerings under your children? How are they, different from your memory?
Very, very little. Chorus was big. There were 2 or 3 choruses, and marching and concert band, jazz band. There was a jazz band.
Okay.
Yeah, that was one thing I was going to correct from your first history night. One of the kiddos said something about that was the first time ACHS had gone to Reno.
Yeah, no,
not true. Both my kids went to Reno.
So went to Reno, and there was a picture actually with the Rivera brothers of Reno when your son was playing tenor sax.
Right. I think my daughter was actually in that one too.
Oh, really?
She played
alto. Okay. A lot of reeds in your family.
Yeah. Well, they didn't want to play the clarinet. Mom played that. So.
Yeah, I'm hoping my daughters don't want to play trombone.
Right. Yeah,
I'm hoping for a little bit more of a scholarship instrument like oboe, bassoon, French horn.
Right. Yeah. During my kids' tenure, they went to San Francisco and Las Vegas for their festivals. And
so
then
some
Reno
trips in there.
Jazz. Yeah.
And
I was going to say the trip to Frisco the one year, hope this never happens to you. Buses were scheduled and we were supposed to leave at 8:00 at night. No buses. They had canceled the buses. The whole trip had been paid for. Everybody was ready to go, but at 8:00 we had no buses. So a parent knew somebody that worked at Enterprise, and Dr. Cowell and that parent ran to Enterprise and rented about 10 vans. And at midnight, we all hopped in the vans and drove all night long to get to Frisco.
When you say Frisco, do you mean
San
Frisco,
Francisco.
Texas?
San Francisco.
Yeah. And the first thing on the docket was the trip to Alcatraz. Yeah, I was tired. I'm thinking about how tired we were because I slept an hour and got in the van and drove all those kids up there. And we spent the whole day sight reading and then had to go back to San Jose, I think was the hotel, and then get up the next morning and do the festival.
Oh my God. I actually have had a bus no-show and several buses late, and I've had buses show up and say, I know you ordered 3, but it turns out only 2 are coming. We've had a lot of nothing.
Sorry we didn't tell you, but only 2.
Those were Mr. Cook's favorite emails to send.
My favorite to read.
They're entertaining in hindsight, but never to write. That's I've never had one that bad. I think the worst I had was at my previous job. Drumline bus didn't show up, and it was a luxury bus because it was championships, and it no-showed, and the parents were like, well, we don't have time and we're just driving them. And then I was driving back towards campus to go home, and then there was the bus, and he pulled off and called the district. He's like, and then the district called me. They're like, they showed up, and I was like, no, they didn't show up, not on time. And so that's one of, like we talked about, handling a booster organization and all these different aspects. One thing they never really train you is how to think on your feet with logistics and get creative with sending students places. Or like we had just had a couple years ago, our bus showed up, but then broke down, and we had all of our kids Ubered from Duarte. So we've had a lot of adventures. I mean, you can't not in the band program.
Yeah. And then one other thing that I wanted to inform you is the kiddos from Ramon's time frame. They were talking about the uniforms and why they went to pants and cummerbunds and white shirts was because the year before the Camarillo Christmas parade, it was only the second time in all its time that they canceled the parade. And they had gone through the competition, and Camarillo High was standing up at the top of Temple waiting to get into the parade, and it downpoured. It literally poured. As at noon, it literally broke, and they canceled the parade. So Doc had everybody come back, and nobody took care of the uniforms.
So they got ruined.
They were soaking wet, and they were still the old wool uniforms, and they just got dumped in the band room soaking wet. So
I think that smell still lingers,
Yeah,
if I'm being
that would
honest.
explain a lot of things, actually.
Like a lot. We blame the kids in their lockers. Sometimes the drum room behind me, that's the drum room. It's probably like black mold just floating around. That's wild. You know what? I feel like I've heard that story from, you might have told me. And so what they had said was that we grew out, we didn't have enough uniforms, which is usually hard to do because usually you have so many extra uniforms based on sizes, especially nowadays because we fit kids a little bit more more neatly. But that's crazy. So they had gone to the cummerbunds and more of the formal wear because the uniforms were actually destroyed.
Correct. And then, like I told you, Carrie McDade and Debbie Miller were the new presidents of the boosters, and they were go-getter parents. And they went to the school board and said, "Hey, you're buying this for Oxnard. You're buying this for Wainimi. You're buying this. We're wearing cummerbunds. Get us uniforms." And that was
those are the uniforms under Herzog.
Correct.
Which are two uniforms ago. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe they didn't have enough uniforms because most of them got destroyed.
Yeah, most of them got destroyed.
Right. Well, the ones that got destroyed, they were on the edge of running out. I mean, we were, scrambling to fit everybody.
Because there was some growth at the time.
Yeah. And so we were scrambling to get everybody fitted into uniforms, but then they got destroyed. So there was no question.
So you were involved when Mr. Herzog came in?
Yeah. Yeah. His first year was my daughter's last year. You'd appreciate this. Mr. Herzog was very young looking for his age, and the parents couldn't figure out who the band director was. And he blended in. And I think memory serves that he was hired. He hadn't been hired that long when he had to take over. So, he was a little bit of a deer in headlights kind of thing. And the tradition was having band camp, the first band camp in the gym overnight.
Stay over, yeah.
And and the ball rolling across the gym floor all night long. It was his first experience, and he said, "Never again. There was no more band camps."
So he got rid of it after his first one.
Yeah.
It was actually at a time where most were going away.
Right, but he did
late
not
90s.
He did not enjoy that.
So when Mr. Herzog came, based on the conversation that came up before, his big thing was the parents also wanted a field band and not a parade band. Do you recall any of those conversations and how that happened?
That I do not, because daughter was their senior year and we left. I don't remember that being a conversation that year. It was probably the year after.
The year after. Okay.
Right. And there was one other thing I wanted to mention about field shows. Back in 69, the fall of 69 would have been the very first Simi Valley field show. And we went to it. And it was the very first time we participated in your kind of field show. And we had props, but the Santa Anas blew so bad that it ripped all our props to pieces. And I think I shared with you, the drum major was about 5'2", and he had to climb up on that big, tall step ladder with double the size of our Shakos. And he stood up there and we all watched, waiting, taking bets on when he was going to fall off the thing. It was blowing so hard.
Yeah. October in SoCal can be pretty grueling. And Mr. G and I were just talking a little bit earlier today and a little bit, on just props and how they could be the biggest pain. but really change the whole palette of what's going on. Do you remember what your show was that first?
No, our props were giant big eyes, so I don't remember what we were doing.
Wow, so you guys dabbled in some fields way back.
Just that one. I moved away, so they may have done more after I moved, but that was the first one.
What's changed in your role? Like, how did you transition from booster to staff?
Just kind of happened. The job needed to be done, and I was basically doing it as a volunteer, and somebody finally said, hey, she's doing too much as a volunteer. This needs to be a job, and it became a job.
And so PVSD created that to help facilitate every arm of what was happening.
Correct. Yeah. Because I used to be just a band aid, and the directors would travel from school to school. And if it was a big enough school, you needed more than one person. And the two of us would work it. And then as things evolved and needed more keeping track of students, attendance, and all those logistic things happened, it just kind of fell into my lap, and I was taking care of it as a volunteer. And they said, no, that's enough work. It's a job.
So how long have you been doing that role?
20 years.
20 years.
20 years. I just passed my 20 year. Actually, I was 23 years. 3 years was a volunteer, but it's been a paid job for 20 years.
Okay, so 23 years. We'll give you the full credit.
Yeah.
So what's changed in PVSD over that time, and what have you seen change at ACHS over that time?
PVSD has been more accommodating and saying, yes, we do believe in music, and yes, we are going to have it by having the comprehensive middle schools, having the elective, allowing the YAW program to go. They have definitely are behind the music program. And then what's changed is you guys at the high school. I mean, I'm so happy to see you two at the high school. Joe Herzog started it a little bit, and then Stava, in his time frame, was the perfect man for the perfect time, because we were still building and gathering kids. So he built the camaraderie and come play, come be part of us, be with us. And then you guys came in and said, okay, we don't have to beg for students anymore. We're going to become professional band members.
It's different approach. And John talked a little bit about how hard it was to, like, but he knew what he needed to do because he was very well experienced, is like going into the office and creating the schedule that works. And we're all walking into a time where that's not a possibility necessarily. But in the 5, I'm starting my 6th year and Mr. G is 3rd. The amount of change in just that amount of time, but it's administration. So you've experienced a big shift in administration in PVSD and ACHS. And I'm now on the 2nd administration that I've had, but like, you can't do anything without leadership that's willing to work with you and support you. It's impossible.
Absolutely.
And you've been around people, or you've been around people that are not interested in being creative and finding a way to make it work. And you've been around people that want to hear you out and want to try to make it work. And it's a world of difference.
Yep. We've had a few administrators that were willing to think outside the box and saying, yeah, okay, we want music. How can we make this happen?
Our job is problem solving.
Yeah. That's what band teaches you, isn't it?
Yeah. And we're not trying to take no for an answer. So we're going to find a way, and we're going to push buttons, and we're going to press people and try to find what's best for our students. And it's as you've displayed today, has been an uphill battle for a really long time in the area, but we're starting to see growth. And a lot of people looked at the Stava days and they had some really good shows, and they had some really good years. And you're right, I think he was the perfect man for perfect time in the growth. And people say, well, it's bigger now. It's not bigger because Mr. G and I showed up. It's bigger because SOCM is finally, and YAA is finally to a point where everything's kind of humming a little bit more, and things are moving. The momentum was already there. We just happened to arrive at a time that we could try to maximize it. And but the amount of work of parents, You mentioned Debbie Miller and, the Gatchels, the Rhymes, all these people were just stepping stones along the way. And, a lot of conversation right now on change and standing on the shoulders of others. We get to stand on the shoulders of people like you that have done all of the really crazy hard work that most people would say, all right, well, I guess that, it is what it is. So we're going to give up there. That they said no, so it's no. But we're following a long line of people that just have done so much hard work.
It just became a passion. Like I said, I never had any clue way back when he was my daughter took lessons from Trish Copsey when she was in 4th grade, that I would have ever ended up where I ended up now. So
it's crazy to think, and it's infectious because you guys in your passion bring other people in to help out where and when they can, and that's massive.
Yeah.
We are very spoiled with a community that cares and supports. And actually our boosters, we just had a meeting that we were in before we started this, and their meeting just ended because they're sitting there trying to get creative under our current environment and try to make things happen for our kids. And we're really, really, really lucky.
Yeah.
And anything else from you, Mr. G?
I don't think before our rapid round questions.
I didn't refine them.
Hmm.
I think we have a couple. I know we've got to do it. We've done it with everyone else. We have to. All right, I'm gonna ask the first one. Mr. G has to think of the second one. Yeah, look, I put him on the spot. He wanted to put you on the spot. All right. What was your favorite piece that you performed in high school? It doesn't have to be Cameo, since you did get to travel around a little bit.
I still think Flying Dutchman probably takes the top.
Flying Dutchman. It's a good one. I hope the kids go listen to it.
Right. And I got to play first clarinet. Only freshman that got to play first clarinet. So it was a wild piece.
A little bit of a flex from Miss Weyek. I like it.
Yeah,
all right. Mr. G, what do you got?
Oh, man. How did you end up playing clarinet?
Cute story. There is a silver clarinet sitting in my closet that my father played. And he took it out one day and played Beautiful Dreamer on it. And I said, what is that? And he said, that's a clarinet. And I said, that's what I want to play.
See, in the good old days where you looked up to your parents and respected their instrument choice, and nowadays all these kids, dad played drums, so I'm playing flute. And you couldn't do that back in those days.
And I took that silver clarinet all the way through 8th grade. And see, lessons that parents do. I held first chair all the way through 8th grade until the very last quarter when a new kid moved in and she had a beautiful buffet clarinet and she challenged me and I lost my first seat. But then I went to high school and I beat her out, and that's why I got to sit freshman.
How hard did you work over the summer to beat her out?
I worked, but my 8th grade graduation was my buffet clarinet. That was my 8th grade graduation gift.
R13?
Yeah, way back when.
R13 is still the industry standard Grenadilla wood, silver keys. They didn't even make them with nickel keys back then. It's a sought after instrument. Yep.
And that was my 8th grade graduation gift. And in fact, you talk about stories. This is where you wanted to go. I had started losing interest, and my parents went to the band director and said, what do we do? And he said, promise her a clarinet. Get her off that silver clarinet, but she's got to practice and prove it to you that she wants it. So there you go.
That's perfect. All right, I have one more.
Yeah.
Reed of choice.
Van Dorn.
Van Dorn Blue Box. Every clarinetist says it.
My lip doesn't do so well anymore on him, but in the band room, I don't know if we ever talked, there used to be a reed machine. And for a quarter, there was a reed machine in the band room, and they stocked it. I'm assuming it was Henson's Music that stocked it.
Uh-huh.
And it was Rico reed. And for a quarter, you could pop the quarter in and it would give you a reed. So clarinets were never without reeds.
I would love to have a vending machine for that, but I'm sure ACLU would come and sue us.
I think that's sort of not
yeah, but they were a quarter.
It's a service.
Yeah, a service, right?
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Betty. I really like the amount of, time that you've put in as a volunteer and the hours outside of, you know, your paid duties have been invaluable to PVSD and ACHS. And, you know, since I've been hired, you've been incredibly supportive. And there's just, it's a team of people that do this. And there's a team of people in this community that I've been around that have been just incredible. And it made it a very obvious fit. I felt very welcome very quickly, and I felt very supported. And it's because of people like you. So I really, really, really appreciate it. And keep fighting that good fight, because we're about to be in more crazy times with programs, as we know.
All right. Thank
All right.
you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care. Thank you,
All
Mr.
right.
G.
Yep.